Now is the time for change. Doing business in the 21st century is made possible with Nkonki, external and internal audit assurance providers. Log on to nkonki.com to find out more.
A global survey of chief executives revealed that the human dimension is key to business success in the long term. So, if chief executives acknowledge human capital as important, how can they ensure a mutually beneficial relationship with their employees? Our guests in studio are Paul Norman, Group Executive of Human Resources and Corporate Affairs at MTN, and Derek Yach, Executive Director of the Vitality Institute. I'm Leigh Roberts, and with me is Mervyn King. Mervyn, a statement you often make is that if you get the buy-in of your people, you can get ordinary people to achieve great things.
I always say you can get ordinary people to achieve extraordinary things. And you can have the most extraordinary people, but if you don't get that buy-in, you won't even achieve ordinary things. And it's been a personal experience as chief executive and chairman of companies. And what is interesting today is the mindset of the net generation is different from when you were 25 years of age a few years ago. Because the net generation is very aware of the crises in the planet in regard to societal and environmental issues. So they're not happy, certainly a company searching for good graduates out of universities. Those young graduates are not going to companies that haven't applied their minds to how the company makes its money and its impact on both financial, societal and environmental issues. They want to know if they have applied their minds to it. And research is showing that they will even take a job at a lower salary to a company that's applied it.
Yeah.
So it's a great example, I think. If you don't get that right, you're not going to get buy-in from what I call the three tiers in a company, because you spoke about employees, but there's the tone at the top, the tune in the middle, and the beat of the feet at the bottom. So you've got to get all those people thinking in the same direction. That's what leadership is about.
Paul, at MTN, how do you get the buy-in of your people?
Well, I think, I agree absolutely with what Mervyn's just said, and in the application you have to create a reason for why people want to join your organization. And increasingly it's been our experience that the staff are more concerned about how well you do your business, what impact you're having on your communities. So as a result, what we've done at MTN is we've built into our value proposition to the staff quite a few things. So for example, we have a very strong volunteerism program. So at least once a year we formalize that into something that we call 21 Days of Yellow Care. And across all our 22 countries, for 21 days, normally around June, we actually have staff who have identified key projects in communities and so forth, where they get involved, the company backs them, and they basically do that for 21 days. And they've had remarkable impact in the various countries. You know, they choose things that are important to themselves.
And that's the whole feel-good factor, which is so important in the workplace. Yeah. Derek, you're a world-renowned health specialist, particularly in the workforce. How important is a healthy employee to the company?
Well, I think we increasingly have solid evidence that healthy employees are the source of better productivity. They also boost morale. They're critical for long-term retention, and they're also the source of innovation. And so I think that the healthier workforce you have, the better you're most likely to see long-term growth in the company. And there's good empirical evidence of that. When you look at in the US, the companies who tend to get the awards for having the healthiest workforce, they outperform their other companies on the Fortune 500 quite significantly over the long term. But when you ask CEOs in the US, as I recently was in a grouping of a number of them, why do they do it? Is it because of the materiality of the bottom line? The first reason they all give is because they believe it's the right thing to do. And they remind us that there was an era when it was starting to be unacceptable to see somebody lose their arm at work. in a machine or in a piece of machinery.
It's only starting to be unacceptable.
Well, that's now regarded as unacceptable.
Yeah.
We now have moved beyond that, and we now realize that addressing things like tobacco, unhealthy diets, lack of activity, mental health are almost as unacceptable as the past era was with regard to losing an arm.
Yeah. So what trends are we seeing about health in the workplace? Safety, obviously, a very big thing in South Africa.
And I think employees now, when they join organizations, they're looking for an organization that enables them to live a healthy lifestyle. So, things like gyms and so forth have been around for a while, but that level of access, the types of food that they get access to at the sort of corporate where the companies are, but also I think more specifically they're starting to look at other aspects of, how are they being managed? Are their stress levels, are we treating them in a way that increases their stress or not? And we found, in many instances we have to be very clear to prospective employees when we do the interviews to sort of describe very much what the MTN culture is, what you can expect, so that when you're walking in, you come in, you're recruiting people with a resilience that's going to work for that organization, because I don't think it's a one size fits all for everyone.
So, Mervyn, do you think that we've moved away from sort of the 19th century company thinking where, on evaluation forms you have superior and inferior? Have we moved to a more caring environment, or are we still stuck in 19th century thinking?
Well, the answer is we're not stuck, and the answer is it's a matter of good business. And the words we use, doing the right thing, but it's actually good business. And I accept what Derek says, but you cannot look at health in a silo in the human capital resource, because are the working conditions correct? Have they got pride in the company in which they're working? Are they enthusiastic in what they're doing? Because all these things show that, for example, in regard to corruption, if you've got pride in the company in which one is working, that you're happy, the working conditions are good, and of course the conditions are such that you remain healthy, that you have buy-in and you feel you're part of this drive to achieve a goal, then you've got your human capital working, because human capital is, as you know, one of the 6 resources used by a company, and they're interconnected and interdependent. So one must be very careful to look at these various aspects of human capital in silos. They're all interconnected and interwoven.
Because the International Integrated Reporting Framework refers to 6 capitals that you need to manage in having a longevity for your business. Derek.
Yes, and obviously I agree with Mervyn. I think what we were struck with, we had a commission looking at the future of prevention in the US, but the implications apply as much in the US as they do to South Africa. And one of the striking things was that the commissioners coming from corporate America, from the public sector, from the foundation world, was the realization that so much progress has been made in companies reporting on environmental progress, on good governance, on diversity, in this country on black empowerment. But there was no formal measuring on the quality of the health of employees, with the exception of occupational health and safety. And yet, within that lies the largest contributions to risk in terms of the long-term health, early mortality of the workforce. And so one of the things we're finding is that there's enormous traction to start including health metrics alongside the integrated reporting strategies that both of you have propagated so well. And we need to understand, how do we actually achieve that within the framework of either the Global Reporting Initiative, in this country within the JSC, in the US within the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. And we recognize that the same criteria that you used for many of the other criteria of it must be material to the long-term interest of the business, must be measurable, and there must be something you can do about it within the workforce, can very well apply to the type of metrics we're hoping to focus on.
Paul, tell us what happens at MTN. Do you focus on putting the metrics of health of the workforce in your integrated report?
I don't think we've got there quite yet. I mean, we are looking at it internally in the sense of understanding how healthy our staff are. So we address that regularly. We look at, for example, what conditions are being presented through the medical schemes the medical scheme that we run. and what reports we're getting through that. So where we see increases in various sort of health issues, we try and address that. But we are very much focused on a health environment. We focused on ensuring that our staff are optimally sort of the issues are optimally addressed, so that it enables us to get better working and connected and meaningful contributions from our staff. So I think the process is on its way, but we're not quite there yet where we've introduced the sort of reporting
And probably
element.
it's true to say that many companies around the world, Derek, are not there yet.
There are very few companies that are. And if I think of them, there would be companies like Johnson & Johnson, who with their credo going back decades has done this right. Novo Nordisk is probably another world leader. Within Discovery, we're now starting to actually define it. And many of the companies are saying we need guidance on what are the metrics that we can implement without enormous fuss, that aren't going to invade people's privacy, and that are truly going to stimulate the kind of broader change that Mervyn is talking about. So it's got to go beyond physical health and include mental health. It's got to have a sense of engagement in the company and be inspiring as well.
And we're going to talk about stress in the second half. But right now I want to ask Mervyn, the integrated report says that you must talk about the quality of your relationship with your employees. How does one show quality?
Well, it's interesting, Leigh, that both Derek and Paul have been talking about internal concerns about human capital. But there's also externalities and the external impacts. If you, a company thinking on a truly integrated basis, will look at the impacts of how the company is making its money and then its product on society is one of the elements. And in doing and understanding the needs, interests and expectations of your stakeholders, one of the things is going to be what is the impact of that product on society, which I describe as a tapestry of individuals. And we know today, for example, that the Coca-Cola company is being accused of its product causing obesity in children. And it's being slapped with a tax in Mexico, I think in the US, and there is discussion in South Africa. So in dealing with human capital, it's not only an internal issue, it's also an external issue. And one on an integrated basis has to think about this. So it's very good to have metrics, but in an integrated report, one is looking for materiality, and you are guided by materiality by the needs, interests and expectations of your stakeholders. And I'm just giving an example where the external factor might be more material in reporting than the internal factor.
Yeah, quick comment from you, Derek.
Yes, I spent a number of years at PepsiCo. And part of our work involved trying to build both the R&D process to address exactly what Mervyn's saying, but also the metrics to guide that process. So it was one thing to set salt, sugar, fat guidelines for the long term. It was quite another to actually start reporting them publicly, and that's starting to happen. And I think that the need for coherence between the impact of your core business and products and society and what you're doing internally is exactly what the integrated report forces one to actually look at and measure.
And it's all about transparency, and we live in the era of transparency. We're going to a short break now, but do stay with us as there's plenty more on employees when we return.
Nkonki has the professional capacity to deliver on your external and internal audit assurance requirements. Visit nkonki.com